usually.
Do it.
Hello and welcome to Monkey Knife Fight Live, folks. I'm Connor Roundtree, and we're joined by AJ Schullo today to talk a little UFC Fight Night Vegas 40, and it's going to be a fun card. But before we get into that, folks, we have to thank all of you. That's right, our subscribers. We're getting up there in the numbers, folks. I think 488 now is what AJ said before we came on to air. So we're continuing to crush it. And not only that, we're crushing our picks on our rundown last week. I was 3 for 3 in the UFC in the more or lesses, and we would have had the Knockout Kings because AJ and I had your back, but Phil Haas was pulled off the card. I know a bunch of us were getting into it on Twitter over Phil Haas. So Phil Haas, get well soon and don't do that again. AJ, welcome to the show.
Yeah, happy to be here. We were talking last week with those over-unders or more or lesses, excuse me. And we acknowledged it going in. Like either you were going to have a really good week or I was going to have a really good week. Kudos to you for having getting the upper hand there and just having a spectacular card, man. We got another event on our hands, Aspen Lad versus Norma Dumont. This is the event that we all asked for. We've also got the illustrious career continued for Andrei Arlovski here and Jim Miller, who have been fighting for several years now. So yeah, fun card, mix of veterans, prospects, action fights, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out, folks, to everyone in Canada. Like myself, I am Canadian, and all of our viewers watching up north. I hope you all had a happy Canadian Thanksgiving. We haven't seen you since. And the good old Canadian on the card, Lupe Godinez. Godinez? Well, she's actually part Mexican, part Canadian, fighting out of Canada by way of Vancouver, I believe. She got a first-round submission victory on Saturday night, and she's fighting again this coming Saturday night. Now, hopefully she ate a lot of turkey because she's going to need that protein to keep running through these girls. Now, getting into the main event of the evening, AJ already touched on it. It is a fight that we've all been waiting for. It is Aspen Lad versus Norma Dumont Vienna. And folks, we kind of talked about Aspen Lad pretty in-depthly a few weeks ago, but if you weren't tuned in, we'll talk about it again. I'm a big Aspen Lad fan. I like what she brings to the table. She hasn't fought in a while, and I think she's a more aggressive fighter. One thing to note, she missed weight last week in the 135 division. She's moving up to 145 for this fight against Dumont Vienna. So this should be fireworks, folks. And when I say fireworks, I mean Aspen Lad's one of my favorite fighters to watch. I think this fight's going to be competitive based on the size of both these girls. But I think Aspen Lad, she's been out of the cage, as AJ pointed out on a prior show, if it was last week, I believe she missed weight. So very, very recently that she hasn't fought since 2019. But if she's going to welcome it, she's going to be welcomed back to the octagon. Dumont Vienna is going to do it with a bang. So, folks, I'm going for the more and more off this right off the bat before we hand it over to AJ. 5-round war. And I think there's going to be some ground and pound going both ways. And I think these ladies are going to put on a show, but I'm leaning towards Aspen Lad to get her hand raised. AJ, there you go.
I think we would. Yeah, I didn't think we would agree here, but we do. I do like more and more.
Wow.
The fight is projected to go around like 22 and a half minutes, which generally raises the floor in itself. Dumont lands 4.98 significant strikes per minute. She got 94 significant strikes in her 3-round win against Ashley Evans Smith. And Aspen Lad is a high output fighter herself, 5.22 significant strikes per minute, and absorbs 4.84 significant strikes per minute. Both are very tough. While a finish could happen either way, again, I'm going to just trust the numbers there, trust the projection, and say that this fight plays out. And in the one fight we have of Aspen Lad going the distance in the UFC, she fought Sijara Eubanks with 15 minutes and landed 85 strikes. Now, the projection based on that says that she should go about 141 strikes if we take 3 rounds divided by, or her total strikes divided by 0.6, because we're taking, 60% of a 5-round fight. We get about 141. Lad should comfortably hit based on that projection. And Dumont as well, as mentioned, she's topped that once already, even in a fight that went 3 rounds. Both ladies have good ground games. Again, a finish could happen there, possible, but I trust them to be good enough, defensively responsible to avoid a finish, at least early. Dumont may gas again like she did against Spencer last fight. However, she didn't get tired until round 3, in which case, hopefully, our overs, or our more and mores, are looking good by then.
Yes, and I still think that was a big point to why I was leaning towards Aspen Lad was the cardio. And AJ, I wanted to bounce this off you because You mentioned that they both have excellent ground games from the naked eye test with if you're just doing the watching tape test. I would give my advantage to Aspen Ladd based on her strength and wrestling and the way she's been able to quite literally dominate girls. Now, I do know this fight is at featherweight, so it's 10 pounds heavier, meaning the girls are probably anywhere from 10 to 20 pounds to even 30 pounds heavier, some of the big girls that cut that weight, right? So who do you give the grappling advantage to if you see this going down? Because as I said I see a lot of grappling both ways. I see both of these girls actually getting a lot of these strikes with some pitter patter in the ground and pound.
Yeah, I give it to Ladd. She's only a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt on paper. However, she's very physically strong, and we saw her against Ajara Eubanks, a very good submission grappler who is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and has medaled in world Jiu-Jitsu competitions. Ladd dominated Eubanks on the ground. Ladd got the mount position. She got 3 deep submission attempts on her. And Dumont, as we talked about, I mean, you could partially attribute to her laying on her back to getting tired, but I don't like to see that lack of urgency out of a fighter, her just being so content to just lay there. Whereas Ladd, the times I have seen Ladd taken down, she always looks to scramble. She gives up her back to do so, but I don't think she's going to get submitted by Dumont. So yeah, I do edge Ladd in terms of like a top control grappler. I think she's more dangerous with her ground and pound and submission. So Aspen Ladd is the choice there.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. And I love coming out of the gate on our UFC shows when you and I are aligned. We got the team of the Wolverine and Thor thing going. I know we were talking about that last week, but we gave out superhero picks. So hopefully, folks, that'll be your superhero picks for those weekends. Hit the more and the more, because that's both were worth thinking based on the fighters. And as AJ said, this fight's projected to go over 20 minutes. I have it going over 2.5 rounds. So right there. It adds up, folks. So right around 20 minutes means a lot of strikes. We're moving on now to Carlos Felipe versus Andrei Arlovski, another fight that should average a long time. Carlos Felipe averages 15 minutes per octagon appearance inside the UFC. That means he's gone the distance in every 3-round fight he's been in. Andrei Arlovski, on the other hand, well, we'll let AJ introduce him because, well, he was fanboying it, just being the biggest fanboy ever before coming on air. But how could you not? The guy's been fighting since 1999.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Arlovski's been fighting for all these years, and he's been considered done on multiple occasions, yet he's won 3 of his last 4 fights. These days, Arlovski is very content with just being a savvy, slick veteran who wants to point fight. He hasn't won by stoppage since May of 2015, and that's just his style, at this point. An interesting stat about Arlovski is that even though this is a heavyweight fight and he has been knocked out a handful of times in his career, he's only been knocked out once since June of 2017. And you said that Felipe is a decision fighter in the UFC, and I don't think he's like not a huge puncher by heavyweight standards. So I think we see this fight play out. The projections say that it should play out, could even play out for 15 minutes, in which case I like the more and more here. Felipe encourages a high action fight. He lands 4.88 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 5.62. And Arlovski, he has shown high volume in the past as well. In his last fight against Chase Sherman, 105 significant strikes, absorbed 88. And then against Ben Rothwell, Andrei Arlovski landed 152 significant strikes. So I do think that once again, we can see the high output of Arlovski come out against a hittable opponent in Felipe. So I like this fight to play out. I like it to go more and more. And I barely favor Felipe here.
Yeah, I like the more and more too. And I like it to go long, which is something that we don't really hear a whole lot in the heavyweight division, right? Especially when 2 guys are coming in, tipping the scales at over 230 pounds. I mean, usually somebody falls when there's 500 pounds of just dude throwing punches at each other in an octagon. One thing to note about Carlos Felipe, though, he's landed at least 77 significant strikes in 3 consecutive fights. 77 significant strikes. The line is 75.5, folks, of just strikes in general. So that's pitter patter up against the fence. As AJ said, he's got the high volume. So I like the more and more on this one as well. AJ and I are holding hands, best friends today. And I agree with him too. I think I have to give the edge to Felipe just based off of what I've seen. But then again, I mean, it's Andrei Arlovski. Like, he handled the Tanner Boser wave when Tanner Boser was getting going for that little bit. He's been handling the prospects, and now Felipe, he's riding high, 3 straight wins, and he's beat up on the older guys like Yorgan De Castro. So I think this is a good setup fight for both these guys. Both these guys should think that they can win this fight. I think it's actually a pick 'em in Vegas right now. So it's really up in the air, but I do lean with you on leaning towards Carlos Felipe. A little more versatile with the leg kicks, I feel, though I think those could come in big, and we saw that against DeCastro. So I'm going to lean towards Felipe as well. But on Monkey Knife Fight, folks, it's the more and the more. AJ, anything I just said that caught your eye? Because I saw an eyebrow raise or two.
No, I think what you're saying makes sense. And also it's in the stats that whenever there's an age gap this wide, you know, Felipe is so much younger than Arlovski. The younger fighter wins much more often than not. But my eyebrow raises every time, you know, it's an Arlovski fight, because he's clearly proven this trend wrong more than once. As you mentioned, he beat Tanner Boser, a fighter that he was much older than. You know, he beat Felipe Lins, a fighter that he was much older than. So it's always interesting handicapping an Arlovski fight. Unless if he's going up against a colossal power puncher like a Jairzinho Rosenstruck and Francis Ngannou, he may very well go the 15 minutes despite it being a heavyweight fight. So while anything could happen, these are big guys. The data suggests that it probably plays out for a bit.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And Chase Sherman, like we've seen him before, right? The Vanilla Gorilla. That was Andrei Arlovski's last victory inside the cage. And Arlovski 88 significant strikes from him, absorbing 99 in total, and outstruck him. And there's another big age gap. Obviously, Arlovski's much older than Chase Sherman and was able to still outpoint and outstrike the younger fighters. So definitely don't sleep on Andrei Arlovski, folks. But the more and the more is definitely the play today on Monkey Knife Fight. And that would be my favorite play for this fight, no matter what. I think Monkey Knife Fight's the place to be for the Andrei Arlovski fight. AJ, any other fights you want to touch on here? Or should we jump into the Knockout Kings right off the bat, seeing how it is a rollover prize of $5,000?
Yeah, we could head over to the Knockout Kings. Yeah,
let's do it, folks. So let's head on over to the Knockout Kings contest there on the other end there, Jason. Folks at home, all you need to do at home is select 3 fighters on a minimum $5 entry. That's the key. It has to be a minimum $5 entry. You select 3 fighters. If all 3 of your fighters score a knockout, you're in to win your share of $5,000. Just like that. First name that I'm going to look for is Julian Marquez. Come Saturday night. Jordan Wright has been knocked out in 2 out of his last 4 fights. Yes, one of them was ruled a no contest, but the facts are he couldn't continue. Marquez has a KO over win of Phil Hawes on Dana White's Contender Series. We were talking about Phil Hawes last week. Pretty solid fighter. I'm riding with Julian Marquez for my first KO pick. AJ, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Marquez has a lot of power in his hands, as evidenced by his last fight. He's got some knockout power. He knocked out Phil Hawes. He knocked down Sam Alvey prior to getting the choke. And right, as you mentioned, he's been knocked out twice in his career. He was knocked down twice by Buckley, almost knocked out in the first round, and then he was knocked out in the second round. So I think that once Marquez closes the distance, he'll take advantage of the poor striking defense of Jordan Wright and knock him out. Wright absorbs 7.49 significant strikes per minute with 39% defense. That's just atrocious. So I think it sets up nicely for Marquez to close the distance and get a knockout.
Yep, completely with you on that one. All right, let's see if we're still on the same wavelength here. Ludovic Klein. He has KO wins. He already has knockout win inside the octagon. And Nate Lander, we talked about him. I remember we talked about him, and we actually were correct that he got knocked out last time that we did this. And he's been knocked out in 2 out of his last 3 fights. So he's a bit of a knockout king punching bag for us here on Monkey Knife Fight. But I'm going with the stats, and I'm going with what they say. I'm taking Ludovic Klein to knock out Nate Landwehr.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, Ludovic, the vast majority of his wins are by knockout. And you look at Landwehr, he's been knocked out 2 of 3 times in the UFC. In the one fight that went the distance against Elkins, he absorbed 121 significant strikes. So he's absolutely hittable. There's even regional footage of Landwehr getting rocked often. So I think that the poor striking defense and questionable durability of Landwehr, his come forward aggressive style sets up nicely for Klein to probably get a knockout off of a counter, maybe from a head kick again, like he did against Shane Young.
Yeah, so we're agreeing, and then let's throw the last one to you, AJ, and we'll see if we go 3 for 3 here. I'm crossing my fingers. Julian Marquez, he's right there, 3rd name down. Boom.
Yeah, the third one is I'm very conflicted on, honestly. The first 2 are easy to decide, and then the third one, even though I don't favor this guy outright to win his matchup, but I have to think if he does win his fight, it's probably by knockout, and that's Bruno Silva. He's got the vast majority of his wins on his resume are by knockout, 17 of 20. And then Sanchez, in the majority of his losses, he's been knocked out. And Sanchez absorbs a little more than 5 significant strikes per minute. We know Silva has power with even his ground and pound, as we learned in his debut. So I'm going to go with Bruno Silva. Again, he's not like my most confident favorite or anything like that on the card, but I have to think if he does win, a decent chance of the time, but probably a large majority chance of the time, it's by finishing this fight via strikes.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I'm with you where I don't see Bruno Silva winning the fight. And one thing that we do talk about when we break down these fights, specifically for the KO King contest, is how do we see the fight playing out? And I think Lupe Godinez is going to take down Luna Carolina a whole lot in that fight. Now, Lupe wins most of her fights via submission, but if she takes her down, she lands the ground and pound. She averages over 6 takedowns per 15 minutes of octagon time. I think that could lead to some ground and pound if the submission isn't there. Get on top, full mount. So that's one person to look out for too. And remember, she just fought last weekend, first round stoppage victory. Yes, it was a submission, but we'll see what happens, folks. Lupe would be another pick to watch out for in the third one, but AJ and I were pretty confident on the first two as we rattled those ones off. AJ, are there any other picks that you want to look at across this card for Monkey Knife Fight?
Yeah, let's hone in on the fight between Manon Fiorot and Mayra Bueno Silva, please.
Bueno Silva.
Yeah. So I like the more on Fiorot here. I think it sets up nicely. She attempts exactly, 16 significant strikes per minute. And Bueno Silva is very hittable defensively. 47% striking defense, absorbs almost 5 significant strikes per minute, and it's because she's flat-footed and doesn't move her head off the center line. This fight is projected to go 12 and a half minutes, so that gives Fiorot enough time to rack up volume. She's already topped that total more than once. And she'll even go for some clinch control. She'll even, take the fight to the ground and pitter patter with some strikes. So I'm definitely sold on the more for Fiorot. And I'm actually sold on the less for Silva because Fiorot has looked excellent defensively as a striker. Her range management is beautiful. She just doesn't give you a lot of opportunities to land on her because she's just constantly bouncing around. Bueno Silva has shown volume in the past, but I think her flat-footed style is just going to mean she's a little too slow for Fiorot. Fiorot has striking defense of 80%. That's tremendous. Absorbs less than 2 significant strikes per minute here. So I think it's going to be a very tough matchup for Bueno Silva to win. She's tough. She throws hard. But who's the better striker technically in terms of the variety, footwork, all of that, pedigree-wise? It's Manon Fiorot. So I like the more for Fiorot and the less for Bueno Silva.
Nice. I love the breakdown. I like watching Fiorot fight. I mean, just the kickboxing pedigree that she brings into the octagon. For me, I'm all about the kickboxers. I think that's the most fun to watch, unless you have extremely high level grapplers. We've seen that a few times where you see them just rolling around the cage, fighting for the better position. But outside of that, I really enjoy watching great kickers work and the Muay Thai strikers as well. So I really like that pick. Another fight, Jason, if you could take us over to, is Ramazan Emeev versus Danny Roberts. Now, the reason why I like this fight is because Ramazan Emeev has fought, I believe, 6 times in the UFC, and all 6 of those fights have gone to distance. He's a big grappler, likes the takedowns, and I think Danny Roberts, he averages over 3 significant strikes landed per minute. I don't know if he's going to be able to get that output. So I'm taking Emeev for the more and Danny Roberts for the less, because I think Emeev is going to take down Danny Roberts and beat him up for the entirety of this fight. That's how I see it playing out. Danny Roberts' takedown defense is only at 53%. Emeev doesn't have the best takedown offense, but he chases those takedowns. So averaging over 2 for 15 minutes. So I'm like Emeev in this one. AJ, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's Emeev or Emeev. I've heard both, but yeah, I think Ramazan, just call him. I think it sets up nicely for him to win the matchup. He should be able to control where the fight goes. He's a better wrestler. And he does a good job of limiting the amount of damage he takes. Only absorbs 1.98 significant strikes per minute, 66% defense. And I do think that, yeah, there's definitely some credence to the less on the Roberts side. He's got like okay output. He's basically like a boxer on the feet. But my only confliction is just Ramazan is coming off of a fight with David Zawada where it went the distance, and this fight is likely to go the distance per the projection. And they both landed over 100 significant strikes. So Roberts will be a little active from his back. He's definitely not a low output fighter. So I agree with you in terms of the more for Emeev and less for Roberts, and I think Emeev should be favored. However, this isn't like my priority for like a more and less on Monkey Knife Fight.
I understand. Well, hey folks, we had to look at it. AJ is a little conflicted, but I'm back in the wrestler, the takedowns, and I just think that Danny Roberts is going to have his hands full, as you said, wherever this fight goes, and just the fact that Ramazan, as we're going with, is just that dominant of force, taking down his opponent 8 times across his last 2 fights. I mean, it isn't looking good for Danny Roberts. So I like the more and the less. I like it to be a beatdown. AJ, anything else that you want to touch on from this UFC 40 card? I know Jim Miller's on the card. I know you're a big Jim Miller guy. Anything you want to touch on there? Maybe
I'm a big Jim Miller guy. New Jersey's own.
Yeah, it's like how could somebody not be a big Jim Miller guy? He's given so much to the sport. Has been fighting since 2005. Just to quickly touch up on his matchup. Look, I think this is the best matchup he's gotten in years. He's facing an opponent who has shown very questionable takedown defense and defensive grappling, and I think Miller's even got a boxing advantage here. The thing with Miller these days is he has a very strong round 1, and then does slow down as the fight goes on. He'll still fight through it. He'll fight through fatigue and give his best effort and everything like that. But going back to 2016, Miller has not won a fight that has gone past the first round. His last fight that he won that went past 5 minutes was against Thiago Alves back in November of 2016, headlined by Conor McGregor and Eddie Alvarez, that UFC 205 card. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Oh, look at that. Oh, I
was there.
That. Oh my gosh.
Great night.
Look at that. Just perfect.
Dude, we are in some kind of synchronization over the last couple of weeks on this show between picks and like just everything. Way to go, AJ. I'm proud of you. I'm sending you an air hug.
You know what? I don't even think I would have brought it up. All right, it's possible I would have brought it up if I already noticed your hat. I might have been like, ooh, that'd be a little bit maybe too much, but I didn't notice it. I brought it up, and look at that, man.
The Furious Georges are rocking with us. They're giving us a head nod.
Some fun. There's some fun Jim Miller stuff here, just off his fight record. His first UFC fight, October 18th, 2008. This is going to be his 37th UFC fight. That was headlined by Michael Bisping at UFC 89. And Jim Miller in Jim Miller fashion got a nice submission win. I mean, just the names. Gray Maynard, Charlie Olives, 11 years ago, who's now fighting for a lightweight title. Or is the lightweight champion who's fighting to defend his title. Just some fun stuff,
Yeah, Jim Miller is honestly, he's fought everybody. If you think about it, he's fought the guy that Charlie Olives is fighting. He's fought and lost to Dustin Poirier. He's fought Anthony Pettis. Right. He fought Diego Sanchez. He fought Michael Chiesa. Honestly, I think it's like an eye test. He's even fought Cowboy. I think he fought Cowboy. Didn't he get knocked out by Cowboy way back when?
Yeah,
with that vicious kick.
Yep.
So I mean, he's taught. Oh my gosh, he's also fought Gleason Tebow, the only guy to ever out takedown Habib Nurmagomedov inside a UFC octagon. So basically, he is we want to talk about gatekeepers. There's a guy. There's your gatekeeper. The gatekeeper among gatekeepers. I don't know. Has he ever fought for a title in the UFC? I don't see. I'm on UFC stats. He's never fought for the UFC. Over 30 fights inside the octagon, and he's fought how many ex-champions?
He was a champion in. He was never a UFC champion, but he was a champion in an MMA promotion called the Ring of Combat, where he won 2 titles there.
Ring of Combat champion,
which is a New Jersey specific in 2006. I'm trying to pull this out. Yes. Then he went to the UFC.
Don't panic, Jason. We still love you.
Thank you.
No, but in all seriousness, though, we were talking about that a few weeks ago on this show, just the conversation of gatekeepers and what would you define a gatekeeper as? This is a gatekeeper. Over 30 fights inside the organization, never a title fight, and has fought a current champion, a current challenger, former champion, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's just off the top of my head. There's probably like a couple in there. He's even fought Beneil Dariush. Goodness gracious. Jim Miller, folks, watch out for that one on Saturday night. And I agree with AJ's pick. I actually have Jim Miller as my pick to win this fight. I think Gonzalez is very gettable from what I've seen on tape. Now, I've actually only seen very limited tape from Gonzalez, but I've seen a whole lot on Jim Miller. And I think Jim Miller is going to be able to take this guy down and beat him up. AJ, did you predict a finish in this one?
I do. I do think Miller finishes this guy, Gonzalez here. I've seen he's been submitted in a couple of his losses. There's sequences of some of his fights I've seen where I think Miller could just get in a dominant position and probably just get a rear naked choke, take the back.
There you go, folks. An ode to Jim Miller here on Monkey Knife Fight Live and giving you the picks as they are. And it's been I'm excited for this one. You know, there's been a couple of these fight matchups where we've been looking at like, oh, well, we might skip this. And I think it was one of the things that came up was this is the first time that we think the UFC's ever hosted back-to-back female main events, pardon me, not co-main events. And it's actually awesome because both times this fight, like I'm excited to see Aspen Ladd fight. I'm a bit of an Aspen Ladd fangirl, if you haven't noticed. I've been pumping her up for about 2 weeks on this show, and I'm riding with my feeling. I think she's going to go out and smash Dumont Vienna in that fight. And I think it's going to be an awesome one to watch. AJ, any final notes to take away for every one of our loyal subscribers that we love so much? And make sure you subscribe to us right now if you haven't already done so.
Yeah, pleasure doing the show as always. Yeah, guys, please, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Please leave a pleasant comment as well. We're at 488 subscribers. It's a big goal of us to get to, or big goal of ours, excuse me, to get to 500. So just 12 more guys. Every sub makes a huge difference. So please feel so generous as to do so. And good luck on all your contests, guys. It'll be a fun event, I think.
And it doesn't have to be a pleasant comment. Have no fear and hold us accountable because it's fun. And guess what? We're doing our work, folks. We work really hard and we try to give you the guys the best options and always give you what we see. And last week it worked out for me and AJ pretty well. So let's get back together this weekend and let's have some fun. So hold us accountable if we're wrong, but let's get ready to hit it hard on another weekend of Monkey Knife Fight, folks. I'm Connor Roundtree. That's AJ Schullo. And I already said it.